live on YouTube. It's the Bhagavatam, 5th Canto, Book 5. We have a short chapter today. We're going to cover the whole chapter. It's about the final descendants in the lineage of Priyavrata. So if you remember, that's basically the backbone on which all the narrations are happening, is the descendants from Manu, who is a descendant of Brahma. And as you get to somebody important in that family tree, then some big story gets told. So we just finished hearing about Rishabha and then Bharata. Bharata was a very long story because they were very important people in that lineage. And now after Bharata, who's left? There's a couple of people that are left, which very short descriptions for them. So this will end the whole family tree, and then after that a brand new subject will come up, which is the subject of cosmology. And that will come up because the person who's hearing this story, Parikshit, he will ask about it, because it was briefly mentioned when Priyavrata himself, when Shuka told the story of Priyavrata himself and his deeds in his life. He did something to the cosmology of the universe that changed it. Excuse me. So Parikshit's going to ask to hear a lot more about that. So we're going to get, I think the rest of Canto 5 will be about cosmology, and that'll be very interesting to us who are quite interested in astronomy and astrology. So without the further ado, let's begin. There's 16 texts in this chapter. As I mentioned, we will get to them all today. They're very simple. Some of them are very interesting, though. You could probably do the same thing with this that I did in the opening of Canto 4, which still is not finished. In the opening of Canto 4, there's also the family tree section of the Bhagavatam kind of begins there. And by exploring the names of the people, you get very interesting lessons. You could probably do the same thing here. However, I haven't taken the time to do that here because I'm kind of just interested in getting to the cosmology. Guilty. So let's just go through it at face value and see what it's saying. Shishuku Vacha. Paratasyatmaja Sumatir Namabito Yam Uhavavaha Kechit Pakandhina Rishabha Padavim Anuvartamanan Chanarya Aveda Samanatam Devatam Samanishaya Papiyasa Kalau Kalpayishanti. Beautiful Shuka said, Bharata had a son. Bharata had several sons, but his main son is named Sumati. And so now we're going to hear about Sumati. Sumati, which means good intelligence. Sumati was Rishabha Padavim Manuvartamanam. That means he went on the same path that Rishabha followed. So remember, Rishabha was the first amazing story of a king who renounced the kingdom and became an extreme yogi. And Rishabha's particular type of yoga was Avadhuta yoga, where his behavior became completely abnormal. So his grandson then, Sumati is the grandson of Rishabha. His grandson followed that same path. Remember when Rishabhadev's activities were described, Shuka said nobody could do this except Rishabhadev. But you can see people speak with exaggerated emphasis. Somebody else could do it, obviously his grandson. But that is very noteworthy that he was able to live the same kind of life that Rishabha did. And because of that, there are opinions floating around about Sumati that he must be somebody quite special like Rishabha, in the sense that Rishabha was an avatar of Vishnu. Now, there's different types of avatars that you might not be familiar with. it doesn't necessarily mean that a person is literally an incarnation of Vishnu, that they are an avatar of Vishnu. They could be an avatar. They could be a avatar means when a part of something comes down into some other place. Like the sun has an avatar to earth through the sunlight. So the sun is not actually here, but through the sunlight it comes here. Many Vishnu avatars are like that. It's not like the sun is literally coming to earth, but the power of the sun is coming to earth. So Rishabhadev, for example, is that kind of an avatar. So since Sumati was able to live a life like Rishabha did, some people think he must be an avatar like Rishabha, but the Bhagavatam doesn't say so. So what Shuka, or the sages don't say so, and what Shuka says is, this is not really a wise opinion. So he says, in the flawful Kali age, that's the Papiyatha Kalau, in the flawful Kali age, some misinformed, Aveda Samana, misinformed, and Anarya, uncultured, imposters, Pakhanda. Imposters mean people that pretend they know what they're talking about. So basically in Kali Yuga, everybody's a Pakhanda. We're all pretending that we know what we're talking about. But actually we're Anarya and Aveda. We're uneducated and uncultured. What do we mean uncultured? Culture is the basic education that you get from birth in the family. And then you can go to a school to get special, explicit education. That would be a Veda. So, but we have neither qualification. We have neither Arya nor Veda. Yet we still talk like our opinions are very, very important. So he says in this Kali Yuga, when people, although they have no culture nor education, but they think that their kalpa is very important, kalpayishyati. And so they say he must be a devata. And they believe it. Now, there's nothing here mentioned about Buddhism, but the comments on this text mention that in Kali Yuga, there are people that have this that consider this person Sumati to be Vishnu, and there's some particular school of Buddhism. Okay, so basically the takeaway from this, oh my God, what is this comment? Which Yuga do you believe us to be experiencing currently? It's not what I believe. Like I just finished saying, it's like my opinion. What's the difference of my opinion? And even if my name was Paramahamsa Yogananda, what would be the difference of my opinion? When in Kali Yuga everybody is Aved and Anarya. So the importance of our opinions is not great. The opinions of the things which have survived from previous to Kali Yuga are important. So just watch the videos that I made on Surya Siddhanta. Surya Siddhanta tells us exactly how to calculate what yuga it is using astrology. And it is without a doubt, without a question, it is the initial dawning portion introductory to the Kali Yuga. So the takeaway from so far is Rishabhadev had a son Bharata had a son Sumati. Sumati was a lot like Rishabhadev. He lived like Rishabhadev, so people think he was like an incarnation like Rishabhadev, but in fact he's not. Which is important. Regular people can do great things too. Okay, next text. Tasmat. Tasmat means him. Vridhasenayam Devatajit Nama Putra Bhavat. With Vridhasena, he had a child named Devatajit. So Bharata means the person who maintains people, who takes care of people. There's really no debates about the yuga except among Pakhandas. As you know, Bharata means to maintain or to protect. His son is named Sumati, which means good choices, good intellect. Sumati's son is Vridhasena. I'm sorry, that's the son is Devatajit, the mother is Vridhasena. It's very, like I said, you could probably get cool lessons by translating these and thinking about the meaning of the translations of the names. Vridhasena means a mature warrior or a mature student. Devatajit means the ability to conquer destiny. So Sumati, the good decision-making ability, when it marries experience, Vridhasena, the power of experience, then you get the ability to conquer fate. Devatajit. See, like that. All these kind of lessons can come out by studying the family tree and how the kids were named. Ata Suryam Tattanayo Devadyumnas. Now, of course, names happen. That's the reason why we have two names, right? Vic, Dekara, because there's another Vic somewhere in the world. So you give two names, or three, or the first or the third. Same thing is happening here. There's another Devadyumna, of course, somewhere else. So don't get confused and think anytime a Devadyumna is mentioned, it's the same Devadyumna. Ata Suryam Tattanayo Devadyumnas. Devadyumnaha. Tato Dhenumatyam Sutta Parameshti. Tasya Suvarchalyam Pratiha Upajata. Devatajit with Asuri had a child named Devadyumna. So let's go back. Rishabha, I forget the wife's name, Barhishmati, I think, had a child named Bharata. Bharata had a child named, oh my God, Bharata had a child named Sumati. Sumati had a child named Devatajit. Devatajit and Asuri had a child named Devadyumna. That means the glory of the gods. That comes after conquering fate. Or the glory of destiny, even. Devadyumna with Dhenumati had a child named Parameshti, the supreme creator. Parameshti with Suvarchala had a child named Pratiha. Not sure of the meaning. Ya Atma Vidya. Now Pratiha gets a little bit of a footnote of who Pratiha was. The other people are just passed over, they're only named. In other Puranas, you might find stories about these people. But here in this Purana, Shuka is just going through their names. Parameshti with Suvarchala had a child named Pratiha. Who is Pratiha? Ya Atma Vidyam Akhyaya Swayam Samshuddho Mahapurusham Anusasmarna. He completely purified himself by meditation on the great person, and he taught people self-knowledge. So Pratiha gets a little bit of attention from Shuka because he taught Atma Vidya. Atma Vidya is self-knowledge. And how is he able to teach Atma Vidya after Swayam Samshuddhi? After he actually realized it himself. And how did he actually realize it himself? By Mahapurusham Anu Sasmara. Mahapurush means the great person. So this means the original person, the original being. By smara, by thinking about, dwelling upon, what is it? Greetings. By dwelling upon the great person, he purified himself and understood himself. That's because our identity is established in relation to the main person. It's like in a movie, the characters, the identity of the characters in a movie is established in relation to the main character. Similarly, in this existence, in this trauma, all the identities of everything that exists is established in relation to the main character, Mahapurush. So by contemplation of the Mahapurush, one understands oneself. But it's Anusasmarna, he's not a Pakhandi. He's not Anarya Aveda, Pakhanda, an uneducated, uncultured imposter. He's Anusasmara, means he's learning about the great person from the Veda and contemplating that. And by that contemplation and meditation is Atma Swayam Shamshuddhi. He purifies himself, and then when purified of himself, he can teach. To put it very simply in the words of the Cro-Mags, the great hardcore band from the 1980s, first you gotta learn, then only can you teach. Okay, continuing. Pratihat suvarchalyam pratiharthradayas traya asan idya kovida suna pratihartu stutyam ajabhumanav ajanishatam. With pratiha, so let's see, the family tree is going Rishabha, Bharata, Sumati, Devatajit, Devadyumna, Parameshti, Pratiha. Pratiha is this one who purified himself and taught about self-knowledge. Then he has 3 sons who were very good in Vedic rituals. The chief of those sons was Pratiharta. Pratiharta then has 2 children, Aja and Bhuma. Bhuma is Aja is going to be ignored, and then Bhuma's descent is going to be followed. Bhuma Rishikulyayam Udgita Tata Prastava Devakulyayam Prastavan Niyutsayam Hridayaja Asit Vibhu Vibho Ratyam Shapritusenaha Tasmanakta Akutyam Jagye Naktat Drutiputro Gaya. Now we get to Gaya. And then Shuka gives a description of Gaya. Rajashi Pravara Udara Shrava Ajayata Shakshat Bhagavato Vishnu Jagat Ririk Kshishaya Grihita Sattva Tasya Kalatmat Vatva Adi Lakshanena Mahapurushatam Praptaja. So, all right, let's do the family. So it's Rishabha, Bharata, Sumati, and then the names get forgotten here. Sumati, Devatajit, Devadyumna, Parameshti, Pratiha. Pratiha is an important teacher. Pratiha has Pratiharta has Bhuma. Bhuma now, with Rishikulya, had Udgita. Udgita, with Devakulya, has Prastava. There's definitely all kinds of cool lessons here if you take the time to translate the things, which we're not doing. Prastava with Nitsa had Vibhu. Vibhu with Rati, these are just names, these aren't the Devas and all that stuff, had Pertushena. Pertushena with Akuti had Nakta. From Nakta came Gaya, the son of Druti. Now Gaya, we're going to stop for a second and talk about, because he's the most special. Out of all these descendants after Bharata, Gaya was the most special. Gaya was among the most exalted of sage kings, whose generosity became famous. That's the most important thing when you're a king, a father, a leader, especially a father or a king who can be very, very strict and harsh. It's very important to be generous. Wisely generous. You become famous by succeeding through generosity when you're very strong. Because when you're very strong, there's no need for generosity. You can just smack people. But if instead of smacking people, you behave generously, that's a very good quality. Gaya was among the most exalted of sage kings, whose generosity was famous. He was a direct manifestation of a ray of the essence of Bhagavan Vishnu himself. He attained renown as an uncommonly great person. So now we got a verse or two about him. Savai swadharmena praja palana poshana prinana upalalana anushashana lakshanena ejyadina. I didn't see Alf wave or say hi or anything, but this is one of the little sections that I think of Alf, because Alf likes this. These qualities here are mentioned. These are the important qualities of being a parent or a king. There really is no fundamental difference between what's going on between parents and children and what's going on between kings and subjects. Also what's going on between teachers and students. It's all the same. It's just in different settings or to different intimacies. But it's all the same. So all the things which are proper for a parent to do to a child are also proper for a teacher to do to a student and for a king to do to the subjects. So Gaya is famous for having treated the subjects very well. This was why Bharata, his great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, Bharata was called Bharata, the maintainer, the papa, the dad, because he treated everybody like they were his own children. And how do you treat the children? I hope Alf will be a king someday. The world will be a great place. How do you treat the praja? Even the word for citizens is the same as the word for children, praja. How do you treat them? There's 5 ways. Palana, poshana, prinana, upalalana, anushashana. Those 5 ways. So protecting them, nourishing them, consoling them, embracing them or pleasing them, and then anushashana, correcting them, teaching them. Those are the 5. All 5 need to be there, otherwise the other 4 don't work. Savai swadharmena praja palana poshana prinanupalalana anushashana lakshanena jyadina cha bhagavati mahapurushe pravare brahmani sarvatmanarpita paramartha lakshanena brahma vicharananu sevya padita bhagavad bhakti yogena chabikshanaha paribhav Vitati Shuddhamatir Uparatanatmya Atmani Swayam Upalabhyamana Paratatmananubhavopi Nirabhimana Evanim Ajukupat. Okay, let's see what this says. He excellently upheld his duties towards his people, protecting, nourishing, soothing, embracing, and correcting them. So just a 1 second on that. You have to protect the people that depend on you. That just literally means protecting them from dangers. So that's where kings have to know how to fight. That's why parents have to be strong. Then you have to nourish, so you have to be able to feed them and give them health, take care of their health, give them clothes, give them a place to live. Then you have to be able to soothe them when they feel anxious. You have to be able to make them feel calm. And then you have to embrace them. It's more than just making them feel calm. You have to make them feel loved. And then you can correct them. Anushashana. If they're not calm and if they don't feel calm and loved and fed and protected, then they are not going to benefit from your corrections. This is important if you are a teacher. Now, and then it goes on and says, he performed the cultural and ceremonial functions. He didn't ignore the cultural and ceremonial functions, but he performed them all in relation to the all-attractive great person who is the conscious essence and ultimate identity giver of every entity, higher or lower. So that's what I was talking about before. The Pratiha, he was the one who taught about self-knowledge. He got self-knowledge by meditation upon the Supreme Person. Mahapurushe anusasmara, Atma samshuddhi, Atma vidya akhyaya. So how is it that by meditation upon the Supreme Person you come to understand yourself? Because the Supreme Person is the main character and we're the supporting roles. We don't really understand our role without understanding the main character. So here it says he's the ultimate identity giver of every entity, higher or lower. This implies that he didn't care much about social status amongst the citizens, that he made sure that everyone was taken care of and he treated everyone as his child. This is important. Even when you have kids, you have an older one, a younger one. You don't only love one or the other. You love them both. They have different. They receive different responsibilities from you. The older one gets a lot more parental responsibilities. The younger one stays young for a lot longer. But they both receive your love and your respect and your care and your attention. Similarly, when you're a leader of society, the person in your organization who's very up high, capable, and the person who's very low and just kind of a dead weight, they both deserve your equal care. He carefully served, but now, how does he treat those who don't need his care? He carefully served those who showed the topmost symptoms of comprehending the divine, and so constantly became overwhelmed in devotional union with the all-attractive. So this is an important principle of Bhakti Yoga and how it works. Bhakti is a subjective realization. Actually, all enlightenment is a subjective realization. And so the way that it is transmitted is by contact with the subject who has it. In other words, just like how do you get interested in anything like astrology? You must have contacted a book written by somebody who loves astrology, or you must have had a friend or a mother or an aunt or an uncle who loved astrology. We acquire our subjective traits by contact with people who have those subjective traits. So the same thing with bhakti. We don't acquire bhakti or divine realization of intimate relationship to the Supreme Person without contact with the person who has it. And so when we meet the person who has it, we make a significant contact with the person. If you have insignificant contact, then you have insignificant effect from it. Many people see a book about astrology on a shelf, don't read it. They don't get interested in astrology. Some little thing goes in their head. But somebody that really pays attention and becomes interested in the book, they get deeply affected by it. So it's not that just by touching a sadhu's feet and then leaving and going to the fast food restaurant that you get some kind of profound effect. It's by intimate contact, learning, comprehending, caring for the sadhu that you become sensitive to and receptive to. So that's what he did. He carefully served those who showed the topmost symptoms of comprehending the divine, and so constantly became overwhelmed in devotional union with the all-attractive. His contemplations were flawless, and his mind was satisfied with itself. He realized himself as a spiritual being, and so ruled the world without arrogance. This is one of his important traits. He ruled without arrogance. Why? Because he realized himself as a spiritual being. Tasye mam gatam bhandaveya puravida upagayanti. Historians have written these poems about him. Now we get some poems. Gayam nripak okay. This is a flexible meter where I believe the flexibility in this meter, if you care or know about it, this is the meter right here. The syllables will follow that pattern. Does that show up on the screen? Yes, it does. So each one of these marks represents a syllable, the long syllables and the short syllables. This first one actually can be either long or short. It's flexible. And these last two here, this one is optional. Gayam nripakha pratiyati karmabir yajvabhimani bahuvid dharma gopta Samagatha Shri Sadasaspati Satam Satseva Konyo Bhagavat Kalamrite. It's nice, isn't it? Gayam nripakha pratiyati karmabir Yajvabhimani Bahuvid Dharma Gopta Samagata Shri Sadasaspati Satam Satseva Konyo Bhagavat Kalamrite. Who could do what King Gaya did? Without proud arrogance, although well-educated, powerful, and wealthy. So this is the definition of humility. Rupa Goswami gives this definition in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Humility does not mean to be without good qualities. Humility actually means to have all talents and skills, but to not be proud or arrogant about it. The word arrogant is a better word, or proud arrogance. To have a low self-concept is not humility. To realize what your talents, strengths, and weaknesses are, but to have no arrogance about that, that's humility. Gaya had this quality. Without proud arrogance, although well-educated, powerful, and wealthy, a leader of the saintly, and yet their servant. He's actually the most saintly person, but he keeps behaving as though he's the servant of them. Who else but a ray of Bhagavan could do this? Yab abhyashinchan paraya mudasati sadya shisho daksha kanya sharadbhi yasya prajanam duduhe dharashisho nirashisho gunavatsa snutodaha. The auspicious daughters of Daksha, whose blessings always come true, blessed him richly at his coronation. His innocence and purity made him seem like her son, so the earth overflowed with milk, blessing all his citizens. So there are many different Puranas. There's 18 main Puranas. Each one has a different focus. So in some Puranas, they'll just mention somebody by name, whereas in another Purana, they'll tell you his whole life story. Or in some Puranas, they'll give you a short summary of the person's life, and another Purana, they'll give you the whole detail. I'm sure there's somewhere where Gaya's stories are told in detail. But here the summary is, at his coronation, all of the goddesses who are the daughters of Daksha, I think there's 13, they all came to his coronation. And they blessed him. Now, the significance of these goddesses is that each one is a goddess of a particular good quality. This is mentioned also at the beginning of the 4th chapter in the family tree. Each one represents a good quality, like friendliness, patience, intelligence, etc. So what it means is that they bestowed upon him, each one bestowed upon him their good quality. The auspicious daughters of Daksha, whose blessings always come true, blessed him richly at his coronation. And then the second thing it says is, the earth goddess, Bhumi, or Dhara, she felt like he was her calf. So she produced tons of milk. So what that means is that the earth was very fruitful. The earth was very fertile. There was a lot of crop. There was a lot of food. There was a lot of jewels and important minerals when he was the king. Why would she think that he is her son? Because he's very innocent. His innocence and purity made him, because of he's nirashisho, that means his innocence and his purity, made him have the qualities of a child, gunavatsa snutoda. And so she this is the thing. If you're very, very arrogant and strong, then the way destiny treats you is fine. You're so strong. Go ahead and take care of yourself. But if you're very pure and innocent and humble, and remember, humble doesn't mean useless. Humble means humble. It means valuing others. Then the universe feels like you deserve a lot of help and attention. So the gods give a lot of affection and attention to such people. What do we have here? I'm yours, AK Samurai Mama, says the lack of arrogance maybe comes from understanding that all our good qualities ultimately come from the grace of Bhagavan. Yes, and also, they're all temporary. They're all not our true self anyway. Now 11, more verses written by the historians about Gaya. Chandamsya karmasya cha yasya kaman tudura jrur atu balim nirpa pratyanchita yidhi dharmena vipra yadashisham shashtamang paretya. The Vedic mantras granted all desirables to the lustless king. Other kings paid him tributes after being honorably defeated in battle. By enabling the scholars to fulfill their duties, he earned a sixth of all their merits for the next life. So there's a lot of important stuff in here that's super interesting. So let's take a moment. The first thing is Chandamsya kamasya cha yasya kaman. The Vedic mantras granted all desirables to the lustless king. This is the same principle as the earth became very fertile for this king because the king was not very arrogant. So since he's akama, then all of his kama, then he gets all kama. This is another principle. That the way the parents treat kids, the correct way for parents to treat kids, the way superiors treat dependents. The way superiors treat dependents. When you feel that somebody is very dependent on someone, you think they may have a problem. When somebody is very dependent on something, if your kid just needs sugar all the time, you might get kind of nervous about that and want to regulate their sugar. But if you notice that your kid has no problems being healthy and eating right, then you have no problem giving them chocolates and things like that because, they won't abuse it. So this is how karma works, and the whole universe operates on that principle, including the Vedic mantras. People tend to think that by rituals and Vedic mantras and curses and blessings, you can cheat the system. You cannot cheat the system. There's absolutely no way to cheat the system. By a blessing of a great person, then your previous good deeds bear fruit. And by a curse of someone, then your previous bad deeds bear fruit. By performing a ceremony that you're not qualified to perform, you won't get any result. But by performing a ceremony that you're qualified to perform, you'll get a result. By chanting a mantra. You cannot get a result from a mantra that you don't deserve. So, this king, Gaya, because he's akamasya, he's lustless, therefore the chandas, the Vedic mantras and rituals, they give him everything. Just like the parent gives chocolate freely to the kid who obviously is healthy and has healthy eating habits. That's one point, right? The second point is duduhra drur. This is a nice combination of words. Duduhra drur atubalim nirpa. Pratyanchita yuddhi dharmena vipra. So when you're a king, just like with Mars, well, now we're doing the Mars in the Houses videos. One of the qualities of Mars is that it winds up in conflict. Why does Mars wind up in conflict? Because that's what happens when you're powerful. You conflict with other people that are powerful. Mars represents strength. And strength leads to conflict. So this Gaya, he's a king, so he's going to have to deal with other kings and kingdoms, right? And so there's going to be competition for resources, etc. Who is the one who's allowed to make a rule that the others have to follow, etc. This is all kind of stuff that kings have to deal with. So how did he deal with that? He's such a humble person. How can he be a king? He fights with them, Yuddhi. Because if you are not a fighter, you can't be a king. Do something else. Yuddhi dharmena, but he fights with morality. He's moral in how he fights. Pratyanshita. He defeats the other kings, but with great honor and respect and following proper morality. When your enemy is defeated righteously, with dharma, with morality, and with respect, then the enemy responds by becoming your ally. This is a simple thing about animal psychology, which includes human psychology. Even other men will follow a male who A, exhibits their superiority, and B, exhibits respect or appreciation for male number B. Male A will be accepted as alpha leader of the pack by male B when male B feels that A is clearly superior and respects male B. So this is the importance of fighting with others, with not by cheating and not by disrespect. This is something that people, including myself, need to learn. A battle that is won at the cost of the respect of another person. This is why it's very difficult to deal with the sidereal tropical debate. Because people become very insulted right away, so you have to be very insensitive to insult, which I'm not. And so victories which are won at the cost of another person's respect don't really earn you anything. The real way to win a victory is to win it with the opponent's respect intact. Then the opponent becomes your friend and joins you. Because nobody who has self-respect goes to a place where there's no respect for them. So that was how Gaya treated the other kings. He kicked their asses very respectfully and properly. So they all became subservient to him, happily. And Bali, they give him taxes happily. So that's the second thing. The first thing is that the Vedic mantra fulfilled his desires because he was not desirous. It's just like a parent giving candy to a kid that they know has good habits of eating right. The second thing is the other kings, they became compliant with him because he respected them, yet was clearly superior. Also, one of the things that kings do is they want to know. Well, one of the important things of a king is palana, right? To protect. And you can't protect if you're not a good fighter. So one of the things that they just do by fighting is it's not really that they don't like each other when they fight. They're just checking, testing which one of us is the better fighter. The one who's the better fighter will be better as a leader in that department of palana, of protecting. So one of the things they do with fight is fight with each other. We might misinterpret that as hatred. Same thing with science and scholarship. You have to fight with each other. But people that aren't aware of what's going on may take that as aggression. But it's not. You just have to test the ideas to see which one is stronger. So finding out that he's stronger than them, they happily become his subordinates. Okay? And then the third thing is yadashisham. Vipra. Yarmena vipra yadashisham shashtam amsham paretya. By enabling the scholars to fulfill their duties, he earned a sixth of all their merits in the next life. So what does the king do for scholars? You can't really do much for scholars because scholars are superior to you. There is only one type of person in society that's superior to the ruler, and that's the people that educate. These are the people who create everyone's opinions, and they actually also create the king's opinions because they're the educators. So in society, there is a person that's superior to the king, and that's the educator. So what can the king do for the educators? The king makes sure that they can do their jobs without interruption, without distraction. He takes care of anything that he can take care of. Food, clothing, shelter, place to live, research, money, anything. You need some material to carry out, to build some tool or something. You need this many ounces of silver. Here's this many ounces of silver so you can build this water pot that will tell us when the equinox is. Imagine if the Brahmana had to go and mine the silver themselves, or work to get enough rice or something to trade for the silver. It would be a complete waste of time for society. So that's what the king's duties are towards the scholars, is to make sure that they can do their scholarship. And as a result, you benefit from their behavior. So this is what this saying is there, shashtamam shamparetya. The person who's in charge gets 1/6 of the credit for the activities of the people they're in charge of. It's an interesting principle, and it's not unreasonable at all, because by virtue of your being in charge, you are participating in their behavior. With that example of supplying the silver for someone to build a water time pot so they can see when the equinox is, so they can do astrology for people. If it wasn't for your donation of that silver, then the person would not have been able to carry out that activity. And so it's not that you get the credit for their activity, it's their activity, but you participated in their activity. So you have some percentage of importance in that activity. And the Vedas say it's about 1/6. So a parent winds up with about a sixth of the karma of their child. Good or bad. A president winds up with about 1/6 of the karma of their nation. A boss about 1/6 of the karma of their company. It's a very interesting principle. Okay, let me know if you have any questions about these things. Yes, yadvari bhagavan advaratma maghoni madyat yurusom apite shraddha vishuddhachala bhakti yoga samarpitedya phalam ajahara. It's a very interesting thing that happened for Gaya. Heaven's king got drunk and incapacitated from all the soma the king offered in sacrifice. So the all-attractive himself, the true soul of all sacrifices, came to accept the worship. The king offered him pure, steady, heartfelt love. I believe this is the family of Prithu as well, isn't it? Yes, it is. Because Priyavrata is a great-grandfather to Dhruva, who's a great-grandfather to Prithu, who's a great-grandfather to Rishabha. Great, some kind of great-grandfather. So this thing that's happening here is very similar to what happened with Prithu in Prithu's sacrifices. So what happened specifically with Gaya is Gaya was very, very wealthy. Gaya was very, very, very wealthy because, like I said, the Vedas were fulfilling, the mantras were fulfilling all his desires. The earth was fulfilling all the desires. And the kings were all giving tribute. So he's got tons of wealth. So when he's doing sacrifices, he's doing them in a very big way. So he offered so much soma to Indra that Indra was so drunk that he passed out. Imagine that. We do our little homas with our little swahas, and we think that we've done a great job, but when the homa is done successfully, the devata actually appears. And imagine if the devata appears and eats so much that they pass out and drinks so much that they pass out. That is a very, very successful sacrifice. So the king offered so much to Indra that Indra became incapacitated and passed out. Now how do you complete the ceremony? So seeing this, Vishnu came and took Indra's place. What's the propriety of Vishnu taking Indra's place? It's fine, he can take Indra's place whenever he wants because he's the actual Yagyatma. He's the real purpose of any sacrifice in the first place. Actually, Indra is just the token. So Gaya's quality is so great that he brought forth Vishnu himself, just like Prithu brought forth Vishnu to the ceremony and incapacitated Indra. And then what did Gaya offer to Vishnu? More soma? A different type of soma. The soma called love. This is the real soma. The real alcohol is love. The real intoxication comes from love. And then how did Vishnu feel about that offering? It's described now. Yat Prinanat Barishi Devatiryan Manusha Virutranam Avirinchat Priyeta Sadhya Saha Vishva Jiva Prita Swayam Prita Magad Gayasya. If he is pleased by the offering, then everyone becomes pleased. From Brahma to the gods, humans, animals, trees and grasses, because he is the life force within everything. He is delight itself, but he was delighted by Gaya's love. So he became delighted by Gaya's love. So a couple of things are mentioned here. Yat prinanat. If he is pleased, if you delight him, Barhishi, with the sacrifice, with the offering that you make, then you delighted everybody. Why? Because Vishvajiva, Saha Vishvajiva, because he is the essence of everybody. So everyone would feel worshipped and pleased if Vishnu is really worshipped and pleased. This is an important speedometer for you. If you're trying to make progress in Bhakti Yoga, this is an important metric that you can measure your progress by. If people think you're a jerk, any old people, regular people too, then you're probably not doing the bhakti right. Because it says over and over again in every text related to bhakti, yat prinanad, then what? Then Vishvajiva Priyeta. Yat Prinanat Vishvajiva Priyeta. If you please Vishnu, then you pleased everybody. So if this person is upset or not pleased with you, then how do you imagine that you pleased Vishnu? It's a very good barometer. And then the last thing that it says is Prita Swayam Priti Magat Gajasya. This the Supreme Being Vishnu is Prita Swayam. That means delight itself. You know, what do you get a gift? What gift do you get for somebody that has everything? How do you love somebody that is love? It's actually kind of easy. How do you delight somebody that's already delighted? Well, it's actually easy. Because they're already delighted. Prita Swayam. Vishnu is love itself. Vishnu is delight itself and pleasure itself. Priti Magat, but gets love, Gajasya, from people like Gaja. Just like if you're very beautiful, that's nice, but if you look in a mirror and notice how beautiful you are, then you feel happy. Or even more, if you see the look on somebody's face when they notice that you're beautiful, then you feel good. If you're beautiful in a void, then what's the point? So Vishnu is very beautiful, loving, pleasurable, etc., but doesn't relish that in isolation. This is why there are things in existence. Because all the beauty shouldn't be compacted into one point. It should be reflected off of other points. So he places the pleasure of himself in others, and then they give it to him and he feels it even more. Now, that is about Gaya. Now it will continue on after Gaya. There's a few more descendants. Gayad Gayantam Chitrarata Sugatir Avarodhaneti Trayaputra Babuvu Chitraratat Urnayam Samrad Ajanishta Tata Utkalyam Marichi Marichir Bindumatyam Bindum Anupapadyata Tasmat Saragahyam Madhur Namabhavan Madho Sumanasi Priyavrata Tato Bhojayam Mantu Pramantu Jagyate Manto Satyayam Bhauvanaha Tato Dushanayam Tvashta Janishta Tvashtur Virochanayam Virajaha Virajasya Shatajit Pravaram Putra Shatam Kanyacha Jishucham Kila Jatam. This is to the very end of Priyavrata's dynasty. So after Gaya, there are some more generations, and then it's going to end, curiously, with a person who had 101 kids. But none of those... So obviously the ending of a dynasty doesn't mean the ending of the children. It means the ending of remarkability. We don't care about dynasties because of biology, but we care about dynasties because of the stories of the people that are in that dynasty. So even though there are certainly many, many children continuing Priyavrata's line, we don't consider the line to continue because they don't do anything particularly noteworthy. And so that is the meaning of the line becoming lost. People think that the line is lost when the blood is finished, but the blood is useless if it doesn't do activity. So here's the list of generations after Gaya. Gaya, with Gayanti, had Chitrarata, Sugati, and Avarodhana. Then Chitrarata with Urna had Samrat. Samrat with Utkala had Marichi. Marichi with Bindumati had Bindu. Bindu with Saragha had Madhu. Madhu with Sumana had Priyavrata. Priyavrata with Bhoja had Mantu and Pramantu. Mantu with Satya had Bhovana. Bhovana with Dushana had Tvashta. Tvashta with Virochana had Viraj. And Viraj with Vishuchi had Shatajit as the leader of 100 sons and a daughter. Tatrayam Shloka. So this is a verse about him, Viraj. Viraj is the last remarkable person in Priyavrata's dynasty. And here's a verse about him. Priyavrata Prayavratam Vangsham Imam Virajash Charamodabhava Akarod Atyalam Kirtya Vishnuhu Suraganam Yatha. Viraj arose at the end of Priyavrata's lineage and created great notoriety, like Vishnu amongst the gods, but that's all that we hear. We don't hear how he created notoriety. Maybe it's by having 101 kids. Which is not an easy thing to do, especially Vishuchi must have had an interesting time with this. These are all mono marriages too, which is interesting. We heard before how somebody had 101 kids. This is Dhritarashtra and his wife, Gandhari. Gandhari had 101 kids. You can't have 101 kids. It's biologically impossible. Unless you have some special some special pregnancy. So in Gandhari's case, Vedavyas blessed her to have 100 kids from one birth. By one birth, she gave birth to this kind of a gigantic embryo thing that became 100 children. So we don't know what happened here with Viraj and Priyavrata's lineage, but somehow Viraj and Vishuchi also had 101 kids. And that seems to be the remarkable thing about Viraj. That ends the dynasty. You have any questions, you can quickly let me know. I will be happy to reply to anything in regards to anything about Priyavrata's dynasty or any of these points. So really, the remarkable people in Priyavrata's dynasty is Priyavrata himself, Dhruva, Prithu, Rishabha, Partha, and then somewhat today we heard about Gaya. A little bit, but really those are the main people over thousands and thousands of years in Priyavrata's family. Now that this is done, the next thing Parikshit does is he says, Priyavrata, the origin of this whole dynasty, did something weird to the cosmos, changed the shape of the cosmos. Can you tell me more about the shape of the cosmos? Because the shape of the cosmos tells us about the nature of the divinity, because it's a product of divinity. So I want to learn about the cosmos because that will also teach us about divinity. So, thank you very much for joining. This really was now what's coming up starting from next week is kind of what I was always looking forward to looking at in the fifth canto. It's going to be kind of spicy. In terms of, it'll be sort of like the tropical sidereal debate. It's contentious the way people treat the fifth canto cosmology. They treat it entirely wrong. So there'll be a lot of correction to popular opinions about what the fifth canto says. So especially if you're somebody who's involved with, especially ISKCON, and the whole Vedic planetarium idea of ISKCON, this will be a very interesting thing to tune into, because you will certainly, from me, hear opposing points of view. Atone asks, how much karma does a child inherit from their lineage? So that's the opposite. The parent inherits the karma of the child. The child is not responsible for the actions of the adult. The adult is responsible for the actions of the child. The child doesn't inherit any karma from their lineage. However, the child is placed into the family due to their own karma and the similarity of their own karma with what the circumstances of the parents can provide. Okay, thank you.